1, 2, 3.
Hello, welcome to Rock the Cash Bar. I'm Ben Mowbray.
And I'm Dianne Gallagher.
Every week we pick one song and do a deep dive into the lyrics and explain the different ways they've been interpreted.
We will also discuss how the song connected to us on a personal level, focusing on all the embarrassing details.
Glad to have you here. Enjoy the show. The failed Don Juan in the big bow tie is very sorry that he spoke, for he's mislaid his punchline more than halfway through a very tasteless joke. The Fraulein caught him peeking down her gown. He's yelling in her ear, and all at once the music stops as he was intimately bellowing, "My dear, this is hell. This is hell, Dianne. We're in hell."
Yeah.
I don't mean to...
I'm with you. It's hell.
I suppose we could have started off in a more cheerful manner, but hey, man, this is hell.
Yeah. I mean, we're making the best of it, right? At least we got this podcast.
Yeah, it never gets better or worse, but you'll get used to it after a spell, because heaven is hell in reverse. Oh, do you see what I did there?
I did. That was nice, Ben. That was classy.
We're having fun with words. I just wanted to say that out loud. But yeah, so we're all back in quarantine again. Both of the places that I work are closed once more, and we have a yawning gap of a month ahead of us. How are you going to spend it? I'm on a 4-day Duolingo streak.
Duolingo?
Mm-hmm.
What is that? What do you mean?
Duolingo is an app where you can it gives you like language lessons. Like if you want to learn Japanese or Spanish, which is what I'm obviously trying to do, it takes you through like step by step. So I'm learning to say kids' phrases in Spanish.
Is this so eventually you know what your girlfriend's yelling at you when you're in trouble?
That's my hope. Yeah. Right now, like I'm having arguments with her on a kindergarten level. I can argue with her over who ate all of the bananas, and that's pretty much it. If anything more emotionally complicated than that happens between us, I'm fucked.
How do you say banana in Spanish?
I meant to say apples. I don't know how to say banana. But apples are manzanas. Where's my gold star? I expanded my Spanish vocabulary by one word today.
Yay. Bueno. Is it bueno? Bueno is good, right? Oh, shit.
Bueno is good. As far as I know, bueno is good. Bueno, yes, it's happy. All right. This is going to be a big episode, at least for me. It might be an ear-banging episode for you. I don't know. But we're here to talk about...
that's why I held back. I didn't do a lot of research. I'm like, this is Ben's baby. I'm just going to let him go with it.
We know this guy by many different names, different titles. He's Little Hands of Concrete. He's the imposter. He's the international art thief. He's rock and roll Scrabble champion. He's the bitter bard of frustrated intellectuals. He's the doctor of music. You may know him as Declan McManus, or his chosen name, Elvis Costello.
Elvis Costello.
Do you remember when you ran into Elvis Costello?
Okay, so Elvis Costello was floating in the ether all around me my whole teenage years. Like, you know how it is when you have your friends that listen to all the type of music you like. And I never could kind of like reach out and grasp him because I was jumping into different types and I never got a hold of Elvis. I was the same way with the Pixies. I never got a hold of them until the early 2000s. And that's when I dove into Elvis Costello.
Yeah. I had no idea about the Pixies. I couldn't even place them in time. Like, I honestly thought that the Pixies came like in Nirvana's wake. I didn't realize that the Pixies...
They were pre...
Yeah, or that Nirvana was so heavily influenced by the Pixies. That was a real musical shocker to me that I learned like maybe just a decade ago.
Right.
I'm embarrassed to say. But yeah, I kind of came across Elvis Costello. My best friend Craig had an Elvis Costello Greatest Hits album. I don't know why he was drawn to Elvis Costello, but that's where I found him when I was like 16 or 17 years old. And I just glommed onto it he was just my guy. You know, he just became the thing. And it was partly because like nobody else was into him. Like there was no like Elvis Costello t-shirts or Elvis Costello iron-ons or anything like that. He was just this real dorky dude that I don't think anybody really wanted to admit to liking. but his music absolutely blew my mind. Like, it really threw me open in a way that I don't know that any other artist ever has. Because everybody else that I like you say, is just sort of just like floating out there. Like, you're kind of always aware of them, or you don't know when they come on you. But Elvis Costello came on when I was an impressionable teenager, and he really did a number on me.
Was it one song in particular, or like a whole album at once?
No, it was this song. It was Watching the Detectives that really that absolutely blew my mind, because it's like cinematic. Like, before it's like, if I'm a geek about anything, I'm a geek about movies, right? Like
right.
That's what all of my friends wanted to do. That's all we ever did. Like, we just lived at the dollar movie, and we would do the old trick where you'd buy a ticket to one movie and then just spend all day going from theater to theater to see 4 movies. And there was nothing to go see 3 or 4 movies in a day. It was just the thing that we like to do.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's what I loved about Elvis Costello, and specifically Watching the Detectives. We'll go through the lyrics and we'll see. But it's just like everything about it is absolutely riveting to me. Do you want to?
All right.
And let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
Watching the Detectives. Nice girls, not one with a defect. Cellophane shrink wrapped so correct. Red dogs on Duralegal legs. She looks so good that he gets down and begs. So just describing the ladies, right?
Right.
But this is straight out of film noir. Like, this is Jack Nicholson in Chinatown. This is Humphrey Bogart in Anything. I mean, red dogs under illegal legs. Like, that just like I remember being like long before what's the black and white movie that Robert Rodriguez did, the big Sin City.
Oh yeah.
Like, I pictured this as like a Sin City scene even before I'd seen like a Sin City cartoon or comic book frame. You know, just a beautiful woman, all in black and white. Of course, like the long evening dress, no doubt smoking a cigarette, but then bright red meat pumps. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think of who's Roger Rabbit's wife? Jessica Rabbit.
Oh, Jessica Rabbit, yeah, for sure. Maybe I did have Jessica Rabbit in my mind. Like, instead of the red dress, just the big red shoes.
Yeah,
but
right.
Like, this song opens with that big, like rolling bass line, and then that just absolutely just jagged guitar, and then Elvis Costello's weird, geeky, snarky bark. You know, he has a real distinctive voice, but there's nothing threatening about it. You know, he's not like Joe Strummer or Eddie Vedder, where they're just roaring at you in these weird kind of husky baritones.
His voice matches,
or anything like that.
It matches his face perfectly. You know how sometimes you're surprised by a voice, but you hear his voice, then you see his picture, and you're like, oh yeah, that's him.
Yeah, I think you could play an Elvis Costello song for somebody and just go, okay, describe the guy. And then be like, well, he's very skinny. He's probably short. No doubt he's wearing big, thick glasses. I bet he's got a stupid hat.
Yeah.
This guy is definitely wearing a suit, ironically. She's watching the detectives. Ooh, he's so cute. She's watching the detectives when they shoot. They beat him up until the teardrops start, but he can't be wounded because he's got no heart. That is that's Mickey Spillane. That's right out of A Private Detective.
Exactly.
They beat him up until the teardrops start. But that's a kind of a dangerous line. Like, that goes, like, if you're listening to this as a certain type of young man, it goes right to the center of what a guy like Elvis Costello can do to you, because this becomes like if you're, and obviously I'm talking about myself, if you're a guy like me, not going to be very good in a fight, not good with violence, not a big threatening or imposing person, like, this becomes sort of your fallback point. Like, well, at least I'd be willing to go. Like, they can beat me up until the teardrops start, but I can't be wounded because I've got no heart.
You identified with this hard, didn't you?
I really did. Like, I glommed onto that line. Like that was part of like the survival instinct. Like, I can't be hurt if I can just get rid of this heart. Like, if I could just get rid of all of these sensitive feelings, all of this squishy stuff, if I can let go of that, then nobody can ever hurt me again. And that really sat with me for a while.
Did you really try, though? Because all the years that I've known you, like, you have such a big heart. I'm like, no one's going to believe that you don't have one.
Yeah, I would put up the front. And I think it was pretty obvious to people that it was a front, because it got called all the damn time. Every time around this, when I was like 16 or 17, every time I tried to bluff a dude, like, you know, like blow up the chest and try to, you know, put on the tough thing, they always looked me up.
Right.
It's just what happens when you're 135 pounds.
I want to be 135 pounds. Go ahead.
I tipped the scales at a whopping 145.6 this morning. I'm ready to roll. But then in the second verse, that's when I know, I'm sorry. I should just.
No, we weigh the same. Isn't that crazy?
I feel the same way. We have the same problem, just in reverse. Like heaven is hell in reverse. You want to lose a few, I want to gain a few. Like it's believe me, I know it sounds horrible, but it really is this, at least in my case, it's the same thing where you're just like, I just can't keep it on. Like I can't do it. I'm not trying to make you empathize with me. I'm just saying that it's a thing. I apologize for it. I apologize. Anyway, he moves on into the second verse, and this is when he really kind of starts flashing really quickly with all of the detective film noir stuff. And he's speaking like a director. You know, the lyrics are, long shot at that jumping sign, visible shivers running down my spine. Cut baby taking off her clothes, close up of the sign that says we never close. So this is like dark street.
See it.
Yeah, you know, it's the flashing neon sign, you know, the close up the sign. So you cut to the baby taking off her clothes. So, like, what's this guy doing? Like, he's out in the street? Is he peeking through a bedroom window? What's he doing? Is it the saucy?
In those movies, there's like a woman, like a perfect shadow silhouette of people. Like everyone did everything right in front of their window.
I've never changed my clothes directly in front of my window. Have you done that?
God. No.
Why not? There could be a neighbor boy that could really benefit from this sort of thing.
Should have. Guy with an axe. Fine.
You snatch a tune, you match a cigarette. And this is my favorite line maybe in the song. She pulls the eyes out with a face like a magnet. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I heard those lines. You snatch a tune, you match a cigarette. She pulls the eyes out with a face like a magnet. I remember like hearing that and just going, that's what I want to write like. That's absolutely what I want to do. I don't know how much more of this I can take. She's filing her nails while they're dragging the lake. Yeah.
I like that line.
I misunderstood the lyrics. Like I had a misunderstood lyric in the first line. The real lyric is nice girls, not one with a defect. I always thought it was nice girls got one little defect. So I always thought that I always thought that the verses were tying in together. Like her little defect is that, well, she's a murderer.
Yeah.
Like the only problem with this girl is she keeps dumping dudes into the lake.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought this song was about. It was about a girl who finds a guy that she can murder and then, you know, throws him into a lake just so that she can watch the cute, sexy, tough guy detective show up and try to solve the whole thing.
What a nice little romance movie.
I thought it was like a Basic Instinct sort of story that he was telling. That was the way I always thought of it, really, until this week when I started. I mean, as much as I love this song, I'd never resolved that. Now I realize that the song is just a hell of a lot more wide open, right? You can impose whatever you want onto it. Then it goes into the chorus again. She's watching the detectives. Oh, he's so cute. She's watching the detectives when they shoot. And then, of course, they beat him up until the teardrops start, but he can't be wounded because he's got no heart. Into the third verse when he starts flashing back and forward. He goes, you think you're alone now till you realize you're in it now. Fear is here to stay. Love is here for a visit. They call it instant justice when it's past the legal limit. Someone's scratching at the windows. I wonder who is it? The detectives come to check if you belong to the parents who are ready to hear the worst about their daughter's disappearance. Though it nearly took a miracle to get you to stay. It only took my little fingers to blow you away. I've tried to draw a coherent story out of that verse. And I just don't think it's there. I think he's just having fun, writing these dark 1950s, 1940s era, movie lyrics. I think he's doing his best just to be cinematic. You think
you're following one narrative until it gets to this chunk. And then you're like, how many movies are we watching right now? I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but you can impose your will on this song. It can mean whatever you want it to. And you can just take it separately. Like, there's just a fun series of couplets. Then you think you're alone. Who? You think you're alone till you realize you're in it now. Fear is here to stay. Love is here for a visit. That's still, very much the private detective internal monologue, right? Like this is Sam Spade. This is like, it's almost like The Naked Gun. Those classic jokes that he has in this. Where am I? The last line in that verse, though it nearly took a miracle to get you to stay, it only took my little fingers to blow you away. Like,
that's hot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're just like watching the detectives. Don't get cute. It's just like watching the detectives. This one is weird. I get so angry when the teardrops start, but he can't be wounded because he's got no heart. That's the only thing that makes me think that a lyricist as intelligent as Elvis Costello is doing his best to make sure that it stays ambiguous.
You think he just doesn't buy her tears as well?
Oh, like he's saying it to her. Like, I get so angry.
Yeah. Like, I'm not buying this fake crying. You're not sad.
It's like she's weeping onto those red shoes. Mm-hmm. And as he's doing the private detective thing, have you ever seen The Maltese Falcon?
No, I haven't.
The Maltese Falcon is a movie with Humphrey Bogart, and it's great. But I think it's early 50s. I might be wrong about that. But it's really strange to watch now because it's everything you expect from a private detective movie. Like his partner gets shot in Act 1 and he's got to figure out who killed his partner. And there's a mysterious lady involved in it. But it's just so like not appropriate anymore because as soon as this woman's trying to hire him and he suspects something is amiss. So he just immediately abducts her. Like he literally just kidnaps her.
Oh my God.
Holds her in an apartment. And he's the hero. And there's a scene where he obviously is just slapping her around to get some answers. So I wonder if that line was...
be slapping the women around in the 50s in these movies. Just dragging these hoes around and the girls are so helpless and then they just fall into that really prude lips like smashed together kiss. Yeah. No tongue.
This is how this song influenced me. I used to say for the longest time, just like, oh, she's a really, really pretty, just a really attractive woman. She looks like she should be like draped over a grand piano in a nightclub or getting slapped around in a private detective's office. And I mean, she's hot.
It's really funny. We talked about that lyric that's kind of all over the place. And let's see. Okay, so I'll read this one little piece of research that I found that I thought was interesting. It says, Elvis Costello wrote Watching the Detectives after an all-night bout of listening to The Clash's debut album, The Clash, on headphones, which explains the reggae influence. Fortified by drinking an entire jar of instant coffee, he stayed awake for 36 hours. Costello told Q Magazine, August 2013, "Why do you think that song is so jerky? I drink a lot of coffee." So is there...
I don't buy that story for a second. No.
Why?
I buy the bones of the story. I don't buy the instant coffee part. Like that just... it sets off my bullshit detector. Because at the time, Elvis Costello was married and he had a young kid. And he's like working these sort of ridiculous day jobs and recording his album at night and trying to get involved in the punk scene, even though he can't really afford to be a part of it and he can't stay up late because he's got a kid. Like I think he just hasn't been able to tell his wife, like, yeah, I was snorting a lot of blow while I was looking after our kid. Like, I drank an entire pot of coffee. I don't stay up for 36 hours.
Exactly. That is all blow.
Yeah. I absolutely don't mean to malign the guy, but I really do think that he's keeping that secret. Like there must be some like custody battle or something going on. Like that's cool. I drank an entire jar of instant coffee.
Air quotes.
You know what I mean?
Air quotes on the coffee. And why is it instant? Why is that part of the conversation? Maybe that's his clue to be like powdered substance. Powder. Do you get what I'm saying?
That's how brilliant a lyricist I am. Mm-hmm. I'm able to intimate it to you. But he did. This was Elvis Costello was playing in like bar bands in London in the early 1970s, and Elvis's dad was he was a trumpet player and a sort of a session musician, like a jazz musician. So he was connected to the music world. So Elvis kind of grew up in that world, and he was doing his best to sort of fill his dad's shoes. He dropped out of school at 16 and then started taking these jobs and then playing in bands to work. And then in 1977, 76, as punk is sort of gaining steam, Elvis Costello felt like sort of out of the loop, like he really liked country music and he liked classic rock, and then all of a sudden punk was coming along and it was sweeping everything away. So when he's listening to The Clash, he was really kind of like hate listening to The Clash. Like he was listening to it like, okay, if this is the next big thing, like, do I even want to be a part of this fucking bullshit? Was the way he was really listening to it. So he listened to the album over again. I think he was moved by it, but also challenged by it. Because we're talking about a guy who's got, this guy really has an ego. Like he's got a musical chip on his shoulder. He's a great musician, and he's out to prove, a lot of these other rock and roll guys who aren't great musicians wrong. Like he ends up being like a classical composer. Like he reads and writes music. He's a classically trained musician. And then a lot of these rock and roll guys are three chords and the truth types. Like sort of the way the Clash was. Where Joe Strummer was saying he doesn't know how to do the fiddly bits of the guitar. He only knows it. So I think a guy like Elvis Costello listened to that Clash album and felt challenged by it. Like I really think there must be part of his brain, whether he admits it or not, that went, I can do that a lot better than you're doing it.
Ooh, challenge.
Yeah. And I don't know if I don't know nearly enough about music to know if he did or not. I think watching The Detectives is a hell of a lot more fun for somebody like me than as much as I love The Clash, than a lot of The Clash's music is. But that's kind of where Elvis Costello goes. He writes, he kind of has a weird opening to his musical career where he was busking outside of I think it's Capitol Records or CBS Records in London, and just like record executives and people are going by, he's literally out there with his acoustic guitar at like 20 years old, just like, here, let me play a song for you. Let me play a song for you. He got arrested doing it, but he also got a record contract out of it. So like he's that kind of like, just crash the gates. Like, I have talent and you're going to let me in. He's just banging on the door and he won't be denied. So he starts like he comes out of this sort of like this punked in, but like I say, he's a classically trained musician and he wants to write far more sophisticated songs. So he starts really getting into the lyrics, but he's also following what's going on in the world in England and also following what the Clash and the Sex Pistols are doing. So he ends up writing these sort of really trenchant political songs, and he actually replaces he had a famous appearance on Saturday Night Live, where he was actually replacing the Sex Pistols in 1977. The Pistols couldn't make it for whatever reason, I think we can assume. So Elvis Costello kind of fills in last minute. And he had a hit at the time, or like the song that he was supposed to play was a song called Less Than Zero, which was a really political song in England. But a lot of what it was about didn't translate into America.
Right.
But what the SNL producers were like, he wanted to play this song called Radio, which was about how it's got, I want to bite the hand that feeds me. I want to bite that hand so badly. The radio is in the hands of such a lot of fools trying to anesthetize the way that you feel. So it was his way of like taking back the airwaves for people like him. Like he felt that public broadcasting or the networks and all those people didn't want to listen to guys like him. So his song Radio was this really, really poppy thing that was meant to get that idea into people's heads. Well,
right.
Lorne Michaels at SNL and NBC told him there's no way, you're not allowed to play it. Play the song Less Than Zero instead, which ironically is even more subversive than Radio. So He starts off playing Less Than Zero, and then he famously flips his hands up in the air and has this little like almost like a histrionic fit, and he shouts for his band to stop. And then they go into Radio, and he got banned from SNL apparently permanently. He was one of the first people to get banned from SNL for fucking around on live TV.
Well, I gotta say, they didn't get the Sex Pistols, but that's a punk rock move right there.
It really is. So they didn't have him back until the SNL's 25th anniversary. It was totally unannounced. The Beastie Boys come out and they start playing Sabotage. So it's the big like warbly guitar opening to Sabotage. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes Elvis Costello, and he just elbows him out of the way for the microphone. Just goes, stop, stop, stop. There's no reason to play that song. And then he plays radio again. So,
oh my gosh, I completely missed this. I need to go watch this.
That one is fun to see. That one's really fantastic. You should watch them both because it's neat to see how the guy, how 25 years can age a man. but it's also fun to see the Beastie Boys like in service of Elvis Costello, to see the younger generation. I mean, obviously the Beastie Boys were wizened old men by the time SNL's 25th anniversary came around, but it was nice to see them, to welcome them back into it.
Why the change of heart? Because Lorne Michaels is still a part of it. Did he just, is he like, okay, I like your music. Who cares?
I think enough time had passed, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, but I also think that Elvis Costello's image had warped and changed quite a bit, because in 1977, I think he was 24, 25. He was a real young man and really kind of pugnacious and opinionated and determined to prove himself. But as determined as he was to prove himself, he's also determined to push everybody else aside, right? Like he saw himself as a direct competitor to the Clash, and he saw himself and the Clash as direct competitors to a lot of the classic rockers who had been, dominating 70s music. Like he really wanted to get rid of that crap, and he kind of worked his way into his personal life as well. He ended up leaving his wife to be with a woman named B.B. Buell, who was kind of to call her a groupie is a disservice because she was a lot more than that, but she was definitely a rock and roll lady. And she was with Todd Rundgren at the time, and she had a baby with Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, the actress Liv Tyler.
Yes.
So Elvis Costello left his wife to be with her, left his wife and his young child to be with her. I mean, I'm sure it's a relationship.
No, I was going to say, did that work out?
No, it did not work out. But it's hard for me to think of at least what I assume about Elvis Costello's mindset, to not think that the chance to steal Todd Rundgren's girlfriend, run off with Steven Tyler's baby mama, Rod Stewart's ex-girlfriend.
You gotta think about a guy that looks like him, and he can't get girls like that. And then you get some level of fame, and then they will come to you. I can't say that if I was a guy in that situation and I had a penis, and I know the penis works way differently and thinks way differently than a vagina, I can't fault him. I mean, that's something that would be really hard to say no to at 24.
Yeah. And so many of his songs are about that. Like, so many of his songs are from the perspective of a jilted, for lack of a better word, like a wimpy guy, a sensitive fella. I hate to say this because I hate the word, but Elvis Costello is kind of obnoxious in the sense that, if you're an incel, or you're going through that phase in every young man's life where you want to be with women and they don't want anything to do with you, he has a whole catalog of songs for you to enjoy. Yeah. You just sort of cry yourself to sleep at night. And I know, because I did it.
Allison.
I know. Oh man. One time in, I guess this would have been 1999 or so, I was at the open mic at the last stop in Houston, and it was my girlfriend's birthday, and I really didn't have anything set up for her. So I asked Henry Phillips if he could play Allison, and I would just sing adapted lyrics. And he did it.
Oh, Henry.
Yeah, I mean, it was really, really nice of him, but I imagine it was probably incredibly boring for the audience. But I've never given him the Cadillac size thank you that he deserves for that. But
well, everybody go watch Henry Phillips. Find him on YouTube. Find his cooking show, because it makes me laugh so hard that I get stuck in ugly face. Do you ever have things that make you laugh so hard and you can't breathe and you can't get out of it, and your face is just I lose my entire lip to my gums because I'm laughing so hard. It is so funny. He's also in Silicon Valley. He's the blonde guy with the ponytail. But anyway, we can thank him now. We love Henry.
just the toss off one-liners that he has. Like, I think if you've got a good cast iron skillet, you really don't need someone to share your life with.
It's so great. God, it makes me laugh so hard.
So he starts writing all of these really political songs, and he's challenging the world, and the world's challenging him, and he's a young man. He thinks he can take on the world, right? He writes this song called Oliver's Army. And without getting too much into it, Oliver is Oliver Cromwell, who in like the 16th century was sort of like a populist political leader in the British Parliament. And he actually overthrew a king, and then he didn't want the crown for himself, but whatever. It's a populist uprising, not unlike what we're seeing in America and around the world today. So what Elvis Costello was writing the song about was how in the late 70s, the British Empire finishing up perhaps into a huge economic downturn. Depending on where you stand in British politics, the British put the clamps down on the Irish in Northern Ireland to hold on to their empire, or whatever. There's no reason to get into it. The song Oliver's Army contains the very unfortunate lyric, looking back on Italy, about the problems in Ireland and the problems of having these poor soldiers fighting other poor people in England. He has the lyric, he says, it only takes one itchy trigger, one more widow, one less white N-word.
N-word.
N-word. And that's sort of where Elvis Costello's really regretful history with the N-word begins.
Yeah, I was wondering if we were going to get there.
You can't talk about Elvis Costello without talking about it. Like, yeah. It's not kind of a painful story. It is a painful story, but it's also like, I think in terms of at least the way I think of him, like he learned a lesson. Like he learns his lesson in a very public and ugly way. And I think, like, we'll tell the story. So he writes Oliver's Army, and Oliver's Army is a big hit in England, and he gets a pass for that use of the word, partly because in the UK it means different things, and also because in the UK that is how a lot of people refer to Irish people, or at least it was, then. It's a word that they borrowed from America and brought over there. And I think as it went back over the ocean, it lost some of the context.
Right.
I don't know if that's what led up to this, but Elvis Costello's on tour. He's in Columbus, Ohio, and he's staying at the same hotel as Stephen Stills and his band. And they both played a show on the same night. And they all get back to the hotel bar, and they start talking, and they're meeting each other. And Elvis Costello's in the vanguard of punk and new wave, whose sole purpose is to wipe the slate clean of rock and roll dinosaurs like Stephen Stills. So naturally, they're being competitive, and they're taking swipes at one another, and the tension's building and building and building. And so they start asking Elvis Costello questions about his name. Like, well, first of all, like, why are you called Elvis Costello? Which we should go back to. He, because he was such a kind of a prideful guy, and because he was so convinced of his greatness, his record label sort of gave him the nickname Elvis Costello. His dad, Day Costello. So it was kind of a familial thing. Like father to son, but it's obviously meant to be like a real challenge to the rock and roll establishment. Like I'm going to change the world at least as much as Elvis Presley did. And then there was a weird sense of timing where Elvis Costello's debut album is released in July of 1977, and Elvis Presley dies in August of 1977. So that was kind of hanging over him. Like, I don't know if I know about this name change. And of course, he looks like, I think Grail Marcus describes him as an unfed, misanthropic Buddy Holly, with his glasses and his 50s suit, which is exactly how he looks. So, I mean, like, he's just straight up image. Do you ever see the episode of The Simpsons that Elvis Costello was on?
No.
The Simpsons School of Rock.
Yeah.
He's one of the teachers at Homer Simpson's School of Rock, and one of the other rock stars just slapping him around because he's just a nerd. So just like open hand slaps his glasses off his face, and Elvis Costello's only reaction is, "Oh no, my image!"
I wonder if that's the Conan years, the writing.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was, because Conan's a big rock fan. I'm sure maybe that episode was written by Conan O'Brien. I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah,
but. So that's what's happening is like here's this really, like pugnacious and snotty kid who's riding this huge vanguard, and he's like on the launch pad. Like he's had a couple of hit albums at this point, and he's looking to break America really, really big. And he's feeling himself. He's selling out clubs. He's getting great reviews. He's real prickly with the press, but that's, part of where he's, that's part of the angle that he's selling, right? So he gets into a hotel bar, and now this is where the rubber meets the road, right? Like here he is. Now he's talking to these older rock stars that he is trying to sweep aside, and they get into it. And they get drunk. And Elvis is picking on them, and they're picking on him. They're asking him questions about, well, what do you think about Elvis? And he's got horrible things to say about Elvis and how he's going to be the next Elvis. And what do you think about Buddy Holly? Like, I'm only borrowing his image because of it. Like, whatever. Like, I'm all ironically to make fun. Like, he's being just like super young man, just a fucking prick. And then he just takes it to the next level. Now, there's no getting around what he said. Like, it was Bonnie Bramett, I think was the name of the backup singer for the Stephen Stills band, who asked him, "What do you think about James Brown?" And Elvis called James Brown a jive ass N-word.
Yep.
Which set Bonnie off. So she asked him, like, what about Ray Charles? And that's when he came over the top with his famous Elvis Costello regrettable quote, "Ray Charles is a dumb, blind N-word." And that's when Bonnie corked him. Apparently Bonnie
Good.
smacked him right off his bar stool. And and that's just when just all hell breaks out. So like two of Elvis Costello's guys get into it with the Stephen Stills band. And according to every account I read, they went down in flames, just flung to the floor. Elvis grabs a bottle and starts swinging it at people, but then he gets thrown up against the wall and separates his shoulder. And it's a huge big melee that the bartender has to solve by swinging a baseball bat around and just clears the whole hotel bar for the night.
Shit.
It's a disaster. Like, it's an absolute disaster. So Elvis Costello the next day is seen leaving the hotel with his arm in a sling, and that, like the local press start asking into it. And of course, it doesn't take long before they start asking people in the Stephen Stills camp, like, what happened with Elvis Costello last night? And that's when Bonnie tells them, well, Elvis Costello was calling Ray Charles and James Brown the N-word, and that's when I slapped his ass around a bit.
Ben, I have to interject. If our podcast was crazy popular, if it got more than, 50 downloads on average per listener, he would be so fucking canceled right now.
Why?
Why do you ask? Why would they cancel this nice man?
I'm recounting the story of Elvis Costello's regrettable incident. Did I say something?
Let's tell the rest of the story. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I'm seriously, now I'm really concerned. Did I say something that I'm missing? Did I mischaracterize it in some way? I didn't.
Oh, I think if you dig up the history on anyone right now and find a moment in their young history where they fucked up, they will cancel you forever right now. That's cancel culture. If they find out that he dropped the N-word in conversations in a fight, they will cancel him. That's how it works these days.
Yeah, and probably the only thing that's saving him is that it's an old story that's been over a number of times. And if he was if he was still a big time recording artist or was releasing an album that I've no doubt that it would come back up again, as well it should. He hasn't, he's addressed it a couple of times over, but I didn't find anything like a real satisfactory answer for why he said what he said. Like, I kind of had to come up with I kind of had to try to put myself inside of his head and sort of get into where he might have been on that night. Like he said, he held a news conference in New York because it was blowing up all over like his first appearance in People magazine was this British rock star is getting in bar fights in America because he's calling our icons this word. So it was and it should have been as well. It should have been. It was a horrible, horrible catastrophe for him. Like, he really, really shot himself in the foot. Like, it's horrendous what he said. So he goes to this news conference, and he kind of just makes matters worse because he never really apologizes for it. All he says are things along the line of, I was just trying to provoke them. Like, we were already in an argument, and I wanted to say the most obnoxious thing I possibly could to try to get them to leave the room, to try to end the argument, which I don't buy. Like, that doesn't come out. Like, everything up to his excuse sort of makes sense to me. Like, here's these rival bands are sniping at each other, and escalates and escalates and escalates until all this whole nuclear with the thing. But end the argument. Like, that was only going to turn the argument. Was only going to make the argument worse. Like, who's going to listen to that and just go, well, okay, enough is enough.
Oh, okay. Well, you have a point. We'll go back to our drinks. And
Exactly. So it's kind of ridiculous. And either that's a huge misunderstanding of American culture, or it's a man caught up in the moment and now trying to make flimsy excuses for himself. And as much as I love Elvis Costello, he's a man making flimsy excuses for himself.
Yeah.
So it's just an
This is the reason why Corbin is like... Oh, yeah. This is the reason why Corbin hates Elvis Costello. He's so raging against this episode. He's like, he won't even listen to his music. And he's just like, first of all, he can't have the name Elvis. He doesn't deserve the name fucking Elvis. He's about to like run up these stairs and start yelling into this microphone. And Corbin, the only thing he knows about Elvis Costello is he shouldn't have that name and the whole N-word story. So I'm like, yeah, I know. We're going to talk about it, though. Comment.
There was part of me, like as I was sort of preparing for this, I was just like, can we sort of like, because I don't want to talk about this, like, without talking about this incident. Like, it just so dominates what people know about him.
Right.
There's no way. Like, it has to be addressed. And he finally sort of did many, many years later. He was doing a collaboration with Questlove, and he said, "Look, it's about time. I'm sorry. I should have said it out loud." And then he sort of reiterates that, like, I was drinking, I was trying to provoke people. I don't know how. He said something to the effect of, "I don't know how I let my mind get to a point where I thought saying something so egregious could be funny or appropriate in any way." So it certainly seems like he's come around on it, but at the same time, it's like yeah, it's still a thing that people are going to remember about you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not okay with the fact that he said it by any fucking means, but I have met those types, those small man complex types who want, especially at that age, who want to peacock and look bigger and bolder and stronger than they are, and say, I mean, we've seen it in comedy when they don't think their material's good enough, they're going to go for shock value instead. And I think he was trying to go for shock value. She is in his face saying, "What do you think about this?" who are obviously amazing American icons. And he's like, "What are you going to do when I say this?" I think I do believe that he was a drunk egomaniac. I don't know if I believe he was a racist just by looking at his catalog of music besides that one line and that one song. I mean, like, a true racist is just going to write racist music.
Yeah. No, he had a history, like, even before this incident, he was playing shows for, like, Rock Against Racism and things like that. So he was on the record as being decidedly anti-racist. But after an incident like this, it's pretty easy to look at it as like, well, was that just self-serving? Like, were you doing that just to hide it? Were you doing that just because it's a big concert where you can get your name out there? Like, there's plenty and rightfully plenty of suspicion about it. But the weird thing about this incident, and this is just in my mind, and I may be way off base, but I think this pushed Elvis Costello off to the margins. Like, it pushed him off the launch pad. Like, he was poised to be a very, very big pop star, and it pushed him right off the margins, which is probably where he belongs. If he hadn't put his foot in his mouth this badly, if he hadn't kicked himself square in the teeth, then he'd be expected to be a pop star and keep doing that rock and roll thing. And he never would have been able to do the experimental stuff that he's now sort of known and beloved for. He couldn't have done the weird things because he'd be expected to do the big things. Right. So in a way, in a twisted way, it probably, like, this literally put him in his place.
Yeah, it did. It did. It's like, okay, well, you're not going to be Elvis now. You can't.
Yeah.
You're going to be Elvis Costello, and you can go play on the sidelines, and you're going to get your fans that way.
Yeah. I didn't know anything. Like, I knew nothing about Elvis Costello's history when I first latched onto him. Like, I didn't know this story until years later. I was in a comedy club and I was talking to a friend of mine, about the usual music I like. And I said, "Oh, I'm really into Elvis Costello." And he told me this story. And I was flabbergasted. Like I had no response. So, like I didn't know it. And of course, this guy was like, he was trying to clown me on it. It was just like, not only do I know more about music than you do, but your hero got beat up by a girl. It's like
You're like, all right. Damn it.
Like I didn't know. He's a good guy, isn't he? And I spent a long time kind of wrestling with it. Like I don't know if he is or if he isn't. Like you can't chalk something like that up to a misunderstanding.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, there needs to be a much more dramatic word for misunderstanding. And Elvis Costello probably knows one of those. But I do not. I think that's why I think it was that incident and the way that was like a lot of people's introduction to who Elvis Costello is. I think that's part of the reason why he became sort of this alternative rock figure, but also this guy who was so determined to show his sense of humor. Like he guest hosted for David Letterman. He's been on Letterman like as a panel guest many, many times because like he does like the almost like the Tom Waits raconteur thing, or he's the interesting mind. But he actually hosted for David Letterman. Letterman had like an eye infection in like 2003 or something like that, and Elvis Costello came on to be the guest host, like literally delivering the monologue, handling the interviews, and everything like that. He's a fun guy.
Yeah. I bet he regrets it so fucking bad.
I'm sure he does. He married Diana Krall. She's the piano playing songstress, right. And they went to the Academy Awards. Elvis Costello was nominated along with T-Bone Burnett for a song that they did for Cold Mountain, the Renee Zellweger movie. Mm-hmm. And this was like during the I think Ray was nominated. The Ray Charles biopic, I think, was nominated the next year. But it's like in sort of like the run up to that, there was all kinds of like awkwardness, like, oh, here's Elvis Costello and mm-hmm. he's here to it wasn't good. Apparently there was Ray Charles himself had a quote where, he sort of dismissed it and said, drunken talk should never be printed in the paper anyway, which sounds to me like a guy being very decent about a shitty situation.
Yeah, for real. And, maybe having a moment of like, yeah, I've been drunk and called white people names white people may not even know black people call us, which we probably deserve.
Mm-hmm. But I still think, I wonder if I don't want to delve into the psychology of it, but I wonder if Ray Charles was if the insult was just like, hey kid, I've been making better music than you for what?
I can't imagine Ray Charles gave a shit what Elvis Costello had to say about him.
Yeah, his first reaction is probably, who? What do you do? One more time?
Describe the guy? Okay, we're fine here.
Right. I don't want to make any more excuses for Elvis Costello. He said what he said. He got kicked around for it, and rightly so. He was on Stephen Colbert's Christmas special.
Okay.
And it was one of the funniest Stephen Colbert lines I think I've ever seen, because obviously Elvis Costello is an older guy and he's not popular with the kids or anything like that. So Stephen Colbert just kind of comes out and just goes, I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Elvis Costello, singer-songwriter. You kids might not know who he is, but you could think of him as sort of a 50-year-old Avril Lavigne, except instead of singing about cute little skater boys, he sings about people getting murdered in shipyards.
That's awesome.
And then Elvis plays his song Shipbuilding, which is written specifically about English, like ironworking and shipbuilding towns. But if that song was written about an American town by Willie Nelson or John Cougar Mellencamp, it would just be a beloved American classic. The chorus of that song is just exactly like what's going on in small towns in America right now. Once again, it's all we're skilled in. We want to be shipbuilding.
Yeah.
But he did a lot of amazing things, man. He wrote Veronica with Paul McCartney. And that was fun. Veronica. Oh, I didn't break into song this time. There's no time. I steal lines from Elvis Costello all the time because he's just his songs are just infinitely quotable. Anytime I have to apologize for my own drunken behavior, I always say, I'm sorry, I've been drinking. I was a ghost of the man who walks around in my disguise.
It's a great line. Was it Little Blue Window? Is that the name of one of his songs. When I went through like this one like year phase of really listening to Elvis Costello, that was like one of my favorite songs at the time. And now I should have done the research beforehand. I can't remember. Yeah, My Little Blue Window. It was like my favorite Elvis Costello song for like, I think in like 2001. Anyway, that's your homework. Go listen to Little Blue Window. I think you'll love it.
Go listen to later stage Elvis Costello.
It's great.
All right. Well, thanks to Elvis Costello, I went through a phase as fedora guy. Like I really did, because I got locked into.
I met you during Fedora Guy.
I think late stage fedora guy. Yeah, I think I was kind of moving out of it then, but I was definitely like in a weird mood where like I saw everything in these really dramatic terms, these really cinematic stuff, and I had a lot of unrequited loves and stuff like that I had to romanticize by being the guy in the rain in the fedora. It's a really bad psychic place for a dude to wind up in. And I'm kind of like, in a way, I'm glad that I had Elvis Costello to guide me through it, but he threw me there in the first place. So it's like, I can definitely put some of the blame at his door. But now when I go to thrift stores, I buy all the fedoras in there and I take them home and I burn them. And that's just so
nobody can be it.
Fedora guy will write weird poems about you and then buy you like grocery store roses and leave them on your front doorstep when you're clearly with somebody else. Like there is there is just a hair's breadth of difference between fedora guy and really, really creepy stalker. Like there's not a lot of daylight at all when fedora guy latches onto you. Like call the police. It's a problem. That's Elvis Costello. I think we covered just about everything.
All right. Well, I have a Dressed Up Like a Douche, and this one came to me through Twitter a while back, like a long while back, and I don't know who this is, and I think it's a friend of ours, but I don't know. It's the Twitter handle is called Real Resign 45. So I don't think he's happy with our current president. But it's the song Red Skies at Night by the Fixx. You know that?
I don't think I do.
Red skies at night. Red skies at night. Oh, 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 oh. It's a big 80s song. He heard, instead of red skies at night, he heard red, like someone's name was Red. Red's got a knife. Red's got a knife. Red's got a knife. Oh, oh. So anyway, I thought that was a good one, actually, because I really like that song.
They were like, Red's got a knife. Shepherd's delight. Did you ever hear that old phrase about red at night, shepherd's delight, red in the morning, shepherd's warning?
No. What is that referring to?
The weather. It's just farm analogies. I was just thinking, if you just mistake the rest of the lyrics, like, Red's got a knife. I put into the rest of the song.
Got it. All right, Ben, do you have a guilty pleasure song?
Guilty pleasures.
I do have a guilty pleasure song. Like I was listening to this, it kind of came on, and I thought, well, that's a great guilty pleasure song. And then the more I listened to it, the more I was like, that might actually need to be an episode. It's "We Don't Need Another Hero" by Tina Turner.
We don't need another. I love that. Was that in Mad Max?
Yeah, it's from the Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome soundtrack. Like it'd be fun to talk about. Like it's really hard for me to separate that song from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but I hadn't come across that song in like 20 years. But when it came on, I was able to do it. And when you listen to the lyrics and you just think of Tina Turner and her life, it changes the whole thing. You're not thinking about Master Blaster running Bartertown anymore.
Right.
Like there's a complex question in the middle of that. So let's put that on the list of potential episodes.
Absolutely. I would love, I'd love to do some Tina Turner. Her life story is so tremendous. I would love to dive into that. So we'll definitely put that on the list. Okay. My guilty pleasure song is, I just had to pick one song because actually it's a guilty pleasure artist, but I picked Flake by Jack Johnson. Do you know any of the Jack Johnson music?
I don't know any of the Jack Johnson legend.
So, okay. I started listening to him back when I was with my ex and I was trying to really get into surfing, and Jack Johnson is a surfer and a musician. And so like people who listened to Jack Johnson at the time, like he coexisted kind of with Ben Harper at the same time. Like everybody who listened to him also listened to them, and they did songs together. And, people rag on him because he plays barefoot on stage. He's like, just like this very like, I don't know if he's a hippie, but he's a surfer that plays a lot of acoustic guitar, and his music kind of just has one level and it's cool. They rag on him and that whole vibe, but honestly, I needed that laid back vibe in my life at the time. This was like, early 2000s. I was stressed out in my last year of college. My boyfriend and I were fighting all the time, and it was like we were on our last leg, and I just didn't know how to break up with him, and I was miserable. And I just needed that barefoot, easy listening surfer to soothe me out. It just really put me in a place. And Flake is a really good, like all of his songs is, there's like beach waves in the background, and it's just like, cool acoustic vibes, and he's just got a like cool tone to his voice. And for some, at the time, I probably would be bored to death by it now, but at the time I was like, yeah, this is like my meditation right now.
Perfect. The song finds you when you need it most.
Exactly. It was my Joe Strummer, I guess, at the time.
He's here for you.
Guilty pleasures.
All right. So we have something exciting. Instead of listing our Patreon songs for next week, we're going to take a little break and do something we've never done before. So on Tuesday, we are going to invite fellow comedian and friend John Wessling to the show to do our first ever YouTube Live. You excited about that?
I'm excited about that. I'm going to have to get a haircut. I'm going to shave my head.
I'm going to have to put on some makeup, damn it. For those unable to watch on Tuesday, we will still release the episode on Thursday. Right now, we are planning to go live Tuesday, July 7th at 8 p.m. I'll put the link on all the social media and make sure everyone who listens knows where to find it. We'll bug you to death about it. It should be a lot of fun. We're going to cover one of John's favorite songs, and then we're going to get drunk live on air and talk about it. It should be a really good time.
Perfect.
Okay, special thank you to Chuck Savage and Eddie Hawkins for our amazing intro music, and to Sara Wessling, John Wessling's wife, for our Guilty Pleasures vocals. We'll let John tell the story of why we thought of Sara to do our Guilty Pleasures vocals. It's a great story. I don't want to tell it. I want John to tell it, so we can't forget to do that. All right. If you would like to support the podcast, you can join our Patreon for $5 a month at patreon.com/rockthecashbar. With that $5, you'll get some cool swag and the chance to vote on every other song that we cover. So we'll pick a song one week. Patreon members will pick a song the next week. We have a Spotify playlist of all the songs we cover, including the Guilty Pleasure songs. It's searchable on Spotify, or you can find the direct link on our website, rockthecashbarpodcast.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. Contact us. Tell us your Guilty Pleasure songs if you have them. Message us, whatever. Anyway, we are excited, and we will see you next Tuesday and next Thursday.
Don't get cute. Vogue.
Vogue.